Thank you, thank you. Hello, my friends. Happy New Year. This is Rick with XYZ Modeling and Graphics. Today we are looking at month number 4 of the D. Agostini Star Wars Build Your Own X-Wing. So grab those modeling tools and let's get started. So let's get going with issue 13. I'm going to go ahead and zoom straight to the build. So we're going to go ahead and get our pieces out. Take a quick little inventory, make sure everything is present and accounted for. With this issue, we're going to be completing the upper starboard engine assembly. This whole month is pretty much dedicated to that. So what we're mostly going to be doing is applying some small detail pieces to the outside of the engine casing. And like last month, you just find the appropriate piece, put it into the appropriate position, and move on to the next one. And it's fairly tedious, but you will soon find out that this detailing of the outer casing is far easier and straightforward than what we're going to be doing with the internal pieces of this engine in the next couple issues here. So right now we're just finding all of our pieces. We're going to start by attaching a clear circular plastic piece to the black detail piece that fits inside the end of the engine part, and that's just compression fit. Next thing we're going to do is prepare the wiring and LED for this engine. So you want to straighten that wire out nice and straight as possible. So the LED pushes into the reflector of the flashlight that we're building here. And that wire will fit along the outside contour of the reflector. Next thing we need to do is to thread that wiring through the fission chamber, because that reflector will set at the end portion of the fission chamber. Excuse me. Next thing we're going to do is thread it through one half of the engine casing. And as you probably already have guessed, we are going to be sealing this fission chamber inside the engine itself. Now it's all compression fit, and I suppose if you wanted to, you could disassemble this. But why would you want to do that? Especially, as you'll see later on, this engine is screwed into place from underneath of the engine mount. But we'll get to that. So this end detail piece fits at the end of the engine, and it's keyed so it can only go in one way. The other side, you have a little bevel detail piece that'll keep it from opening up on that end. So both of these end pieces basically keep the whole thing together. It's a little shaky, but looks okay, I suppose. So we just built ourselves a flashlight here. I'm going to grab my battery pack and plug it in, make sure she works, and voila, she works. So here we are with issue number 14. We're going to go ahead and just zoom straight to the build. Open up our packaging. Take a quick little inventory of our parts and pieces. Now in this issue, or this stage, we are receiving 2 more different sizes of screws, so I've got a couple extra bowls up here to keep the four sizes independent of one another. And from left to right, we got the XW02, 3, 4, and 5. It's also becoming painfully clear I'm going to need to get some smaller storage containers. But for now, we're going to go ahead and prepare for the steps. Now, this is including a jumper wire that will be your electrical connectivity to your laser cannon. You just want to straighten that wire out. Now we're going to be attaching some framing for the interior of the wing here. And you want to pay close attention to the screw sizes that they indicate. And make sure that you place the screws in the proper locations. Just watch carefully on the magazine as they point those out. And follow those steps as closely as you can. So I imagine this framing will add or reinforce the wing assembly when it attaches to the mechanism that allows the wings to open and close. And DeAugustini does a really good job of designing the framing for these models. I have to tip my hat to them. Now these go in pretty easily. I'm just sort of taking my time here and ensuring that I'm not missing anything. And we'll get all those securely in place. Now be careful not to over tighten these screws. They're self-tapping, meaning that there are no threads in the plastic, so when you screw them in, you're creating those threads, and if you over tighten, it will destroy them, and you won't have a secure connection any longer. Now, we're going to be connecting the engine portion to the starboard engine mount, and this takes a single screw. And the point I was trying to make before was, with all the time we spent on the internal detailing of this engine, we are now placing it in a position where it will not be easy to disassemble it and view those detail pieces, which in my opinion is a silly notion to begin with. This will be, at least in my household, a display piece somewhere where I do not want any hands to touch it, let alone disassemble it, just to view a few fictitious pieces that really have no consequence to the overall look of the model or the exterior look. Pardon me, I have a cold, in case you haven't noticed. So right now we're going to thread that jumper wire through the wing as the magazine describes. And you just want to make sure you work that wire through the connection points or the friction points for it to keep that neatly in place. Takes a little bit of time and effort, but just carefully work it from right to left, ensuring that they're secure in those positions before moving over So I was able to kind of wrap it underneath the frame there to kind of hold that portion in place. And now there are some plastic pins on the inside of this that are useful to push the wire behind and kind of hold it securely in place. And as long as this wing is protected, or some kind of, when we put the cover over the bottom half of this wing, it'll protect that wiring and won't be disturbed. I don't see it coming loose from any of these connection points, or secure, or anchor points I should call them. So next we're going to put a little cover underneath the base of this engine mount, and it's just 3 screws. You want to make sure you press that tightly into place, otherwise those screws won't grab. Secure those tightly, but not too tightly. Now the next portion of this is some little plastic caps. There's 3 of them in a sprue. And I'm using my diagonal cutters to cut those out. But when you do that, there's usually a little bit of flashing still attached, so I'm just using my razor knife to cut off that excess plastic and push them into place. So that wraps it up for issue 14. So with issue 15, I wanted to present this information a slightly different way. At least with this issue, I didn't want to torture you with the amount of time it took me to add the plant-on details to this piece. This issue is probably the best example so far of busy work that D'Agostini gives you to do. Sadly, as beautiful as the end result is of this piece, it will be hidden by the major cowling on the top of the starboard engine. You will not be able to see into it, and the best I can tell, you won't be able to assemble it or disassemble it either. So just wanted to go ahead and just zoom through this, and present it to you this way versus you having to watch me put it together. It was difficult. I will tell you that right now. I'm an experienced model builder, and I struggle with this just to get these pieces into place, and sadly the only satisfaction I'm going to get out of it is knowing that they're in there, because no one else will. And this this video is the only evidence that it is in there. So if you want to go through the process, go for it, but in the end you'll just be covering it up and no one will see it. Thank you, D'Agostini. And here we go with our final issue for this month, issue number 16. And as with the previous issue, I'm just going to go ahead and jump through a few of these things for time's sake and not to bore you guys to tears. But there's a exterior piece, detail piece, that attaches to our wing here. That's the first step that we take care of. The next is to add a couple of detail pieces to the inner horizontal vane, which is another sort of detail piece that goes on to the engine cowling, and those just press into place. Just make sure those are nice and secure. And this piece will attach to the end of the chrome looking engine detail that we struggled with on our last issue. Gonna put a little bit of CA glue on the end, make sure this piece stays in place. Now, I'm putting CA glue on parts that I know that I am never going to disassemble. So that's my rationale for it. It's just a little insurance policy to make sure they stay in place. Additionally, we have some piping that's going on attaching to that detail piece that we just connected, and equally as tedious as with issue 15. You know, you just put the correct pieces on and have yourself a shot of whiskey afterwards, just to celebrate your accomplishment. So the next thing here is this unicorn horn looking piece, or narwhal horn, but this is going to sit on top of your chrome piece and will eventually attach to the engine. You just press those pieces into place, and this is an interesting piece. It's something I've never seen before in any Star Wars movie or book, although it could be in some of the cross-section illustrations of this ship, but this is completely new to me. And it's interesting looking. Got a couple of extra detail pieces that connect to it, which wasn't too terrible. I was able to get those on fairly easily. And it's going to add a little bit of glue to make sure those stay in position. Now, sadly, we are going to install this into the engine well of the wing here, and she slips right in there. And next you're going to take a screw and secure that into place. And if you notice where we're putting this screw, eventually this side of the ship is going to be covered up. There's going to be a panel or a skin or something that will remain in place. Mind you, it's going to be attached to the rest of the ship. It's not going to be easy to get to. So how on earth are you ever going to see this again? We flip it over and we attach another detail part, your horizontal vane, to the rear of the thrust nozzle. If I remember correctly, that was what we called that. And then here we go. We're going to be putting the large engine casing or cowling over this detail piece that we slaved over for at least 3 or 4 hours. I know I did. And I'm looking at this thing, it's like, okay, how would I take this off if I wanted to show that detail off? And it won't be possible. Not realistically, or not conveniently anyway. So this large engine cowling piece that we just attached is going to now be screwed into place. So again, to me, this just seems like busy work. You know, a justification for the expense of this model. You know, oh, it's X amount of pieces. Yeah, but the majority of those pieces aren't going to be visible, which is what you naturally assume with, you know, the framing pieces, and that's fine. But why on earth would you want your customer to go through all that effort with the details and it not show in the end result? So thank you very much for joining me this month. I apologize for the rant. It was a little bit frustrating for me. I'm going to push on through, and hopefully things get better. I don't know. I mean, this is starting to come together more as like a Hasbro toy than a decent representation of a scale model or Star Wars scale model.